Support for Good Noticings comes from Calvin Klein.
With the holiday season right around the corner, heat up, give Calvin. This year, give them what they really want. Shop Calvin Klein's gift guide to give people what they really want, like those incredible, iconic logo underwear, their perfect tees, perfect jeans, amazing knitwear,
timeless fragrances, loungewear. Their curated gift guides take the guesswork out of holiday gift shopping, so find the perfect gifts for him, her, or yourself. And their iconic logo underwear is now available in limited edition holiday prints.
Feel holiday heat and head to ck.com to find something for everyone on your holiday list.
Good Noticings, Ashley. Good Noticings to you, Claire.
This is Good Noticing.
Ashley just said to me, "Is it raining?" And I said, "Oh, no, Ashley. It's pouring."
The old man, you can tell because he's snoring.
Could you imagine if he was, if that was part of the sound of rain, was just like,
to me it is.
I find snoring really disruptive. And
Yeah.
I find rain actually quite soothing. So to me, they're like antithetical sounds.
I've flown to Australia with you, so these are things I know.
On our way to Australia, there was a man behind me snoring and I actually hit him twice.
It was really disruptive.
And his wife had sprawled out on 4 consecutive seats and she
She had a whole middle lane.
and she was sleeping peacefully. And I was like, "Lady, you've made this man everybody's problems and I'm going to hit him like I'm you." I said, "If he's my husband now, I'll hit him."
He's the plane's husband now, and we're throwing him out the window.
And can I say this really ties into the theme of, I think, what this week's episode is. If last week's episode was bitches be crazy, this week's episode is men are so much worse.
We've got to throw them out the window.
They can't be helped. They might have to be killed.
Yeah, I guess like with all the great theorizing of like, what are we going to do about the young men crisis? I think the thing to do is stop them.
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
If men want to go to war so bad, if men want to prove their masculinity so bad, I do think we have to get them in like a rotunda situation and just have them duel to the death, because clearly, if you look at unemployment rates, there's not room for all the men. If you look at the marriage and the unemployment and the housing crisis, actually, if half the men got killed off, they would be happier. That's what they want, right? They're killing themselves anyway. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm in a mood. And can I say something that has to be stopped? This is for the pants companies. If you're a company that makes pants.
If the pants are unwashable, don't make them.
Pants can be unwashable, but then they can't stretch out. You can't have a pair of pants that if you wear them once, they get too baggy to be worn a second time. But if you shrink them back down, only shrink it in an unwearable way. I'm in a situation where the plane of my pants and the wide fabric of my pants is so stretched out and the seams have been so shrunk. They're unwearable and they were so expensive and I'm in a fury. And I know you've experienced the same.
I have. Do you know what I did to my pants yesterday? I was knitting.
Shat 'em.
Yeah. Yeah, I shat my pants, Claire.
Sorry, I'm in a mood. Go.
I was knitting and then I leaned over a little bit and then I poked a hole right through my pants. And I didn't even stab myself. I like pierced my pants.
Are knitting needles sharp?
Apparently. Nobody ever told me they're sharper than pants, I guess.
Put it on the list.
Anyway, so now my pants are knit in a way that was like not according to plan. I'm just trying to make an ear warmer for my damn dog. Does the world not want to see an ear warmer on my dog?
How do you warm a dog's ear without blocking out their senses?
I don't know, Claire. I found a pattern and I'm following it. I trust that no one would put a pattern on the internet unless they really understood the ins and outs.
How was Cousins weekend?
Oh, the dogs had the most amazing time.
Ashley watched my parents' dog with Bug. Bug and Bailey hung out together this weekend.
Bug loves Bailey so much, and I don't say this lightly. I feel like whenever other dogs come over, there are certain things she gets lightly territorial about. And with Bailey, she's like, take my bed, take my water, take my
That's
toys.
so interesting because when they're with me, I feel like Bug takes Bailey's. They're both just great hosts.
Yeah, I think so. Because Bailey in my house, Bug was very like, whatever you want, let me make yourself comfortable. And then every time Bailey would stand up, Bug would be like, and now that you're well rested, you play with me? And Bailey would go, no, I'm gonna go see if Ashley will pet me. And we'll go, oh, okay, well, let me know if you want to play later. I'll be here. Speaking of the weekend, do you have any recommendations?
I have 3 phenomenal recommendations.
Yay.
Number 1, on the plane, I watched Capote.
Oh,
Kind of a deep cut, 2005.
is that with what's his name?
Philip Seymour Hoffman and Catherine Keener. Phenomenal performances, incredible movie.
He won an Oscar, yeah?
I hope he did. I also think the playwright won an Oscar because he spoke at my college graduation.
About it?
Yeah. And I remember everybody at my college graduation was like, who the fuck is this guy?
My college graduation speaker was Aaron Sorkin, and he was like, would I have been so successful if I hadn't been addicted to cocaine? Probably not.
Him and Stephen King. Anyway, it was really great, and it really inspired me to go back and read In Cold Blood. I started it, had a nightmare, gave up. I might go back and finish it.
Fun.
Recommendation number 2?
Uh-huh.
Just as I thought, Lux. Lux by Rosalia is the album of the year. I know it's not in the running for this year's Grammys, but it's in the running for my universe. It's for the Clammies. The Clammies are Claire Parker's Grammys.
I'm excited.
6 clamshells for Rosalia.
The people are clamoring.
That's actually really good. I might do a year-end clammy for everybody for the things I like.
I'll do the hammies.
The chammies when they come together. Anyway, it's just so good. It's just so good. Everything else that we've been calling good is shit. This is good. You have to listen to it.
I'll listen to it.
And 3, you know what I'm back on? As you guys know, I struggle with dry lips, especially in the winter. The change of seasons has been really hard on me. At a dollar store, I got a Blistex.
Oh.
You know those little blue tubs of they have menthol?
Yeah, I know exactly those tubs.
They're spicy to the touch. And they have a smell like Vapo Rub.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. First of all, the way it transports you. I'm in high school. I'm in college. I'm rubbing tubs of lub on my mouth. And there's something about the sprinkliness, the tingles. I'm like, yeah, you're healing and I like feeling it. I like feeling good work being done. I'm back on my Blistex. I have one for every purse, every pocket, every room. And I have to say, my lips are healed. So shout out.
Wow.
Yeah. It doesn't cost more than $2.52 to fix yourself. And it's Blistex.
That's so true. Wow. Maybe I'll get myself some Blistex.
I'll get it for you. I could get 10. They're $2 at my dollar store.
Maybe we should have some for the office.
A local tub.
We bill it to the company.
A local cup of glop. The Team Glop pod.
I think you've got to have a cup of glop everywhere you go.
Anyway, sorry, Ashley.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd recommend?
Yeah, I do have things I'd recommend. Okay, first up is floating.
Oh.
I went to a spa and I got a massage for the first time in my life. It was nice, but I do feel that it did, tick one of the boxes of my fears. The touching wasn't so much a problem. I do feel like feeling that loosey-goose, it made me more aware of the ways in which I'm not otherwise. And I don't want to know that.
Could you say that? Could you repeat what you said sentiment-wise, but maybe with different words that could resonate?
Yeah, like finding out the ways in which my body could loosen up then reminds you of the ways in which other times you're tightened up. And if I'm just tight and that's all there is, it's fine. But to find out where I could become loose is a burden.
Yeah.
So, so that was my issue with the massage, was that it was really nice, but too nice. And then I spent the next day feeling locked up or aware of, you're just holding yourself in a different way because you go, now I'm loose and I don't know what to do with all these limbs.
Ashley's pro-generational trauma. If you never know better, then you never know worse.
That's exactly right. Anyway, but also at the spa, they had a salt water pool, like a super salt pool where it's just so salty and you float there, and they have these bars that you can hook your feet into so you don't float away and crash into other people. But I was the only one in there, and I just laid there floating for the entire time I was there. I tried all the other sections of the place really quick, and then I was like, nope, it's the float pools where it's at. And I just laid there floating, and that is nice.
I wonder if you'd like a sensory deprivation tank.
I think I might.
I would love for you to try it and come back.
I think I often feel burdened by my senses, and I'd like to be deprived of them for but a moment.
Incredible.
Speaking of my senses, I just read this book called A Guardian and a Thief, and it is on the National Book Awards long list. I really recommend it, but it really awakens the senses, sadly. Where it's one of those books where you're very immersed. The writing is so immersive, but the book itself is very devastating. So I recommend it, but only if you're in a mental state to be able to handle. And then my third recommendation this week is the movie Eternity with Elizabeth Olsen. It's coming out, I think, like next week. And I loved it. You guys know I've been on this podcast a ripping, roaring, screaming about a classic rom-com where there's rom and there's com and believable romances, but like also unbelievable in a way where you're like, it's aspirational and fun and like out of this world, but in a somewhat grounded measure. I think it checked all those boxes for me.
If somebody lives in New York City, is there any way for them to come see Eternity next week on Tuesday, maybe?
We have teamed up with A24 and there is going to be a screening for The Worms. I'm really excited to see it again and I'm really excited to be able to see it with you guys.
Yeah, they brought us to a screening last week, A24, and we like emailed them immediately. We were like, we love this movie. We've been looking for a rom-com to share with our audience. Can we take our audience? And so we are doing a Good Noticings hosted free screening of Eternity. The event is Tuesday, November 18th at 7 p.m. at the Regal Union Square, 850 Broadway, New York. There will be free tickets for all of our listeners. Feel free to bring a friend, bring a non-worm if you think they might be interested.
The RSVP link will be in our link in bio, and you can find it on our social media.
Mm-hmm. And of course, if you're more of a Reedy Petey than a movie lover, you could be both. We are so excited about our first ever in-person book club event, Friday, November 21st. It's going to be with Katie Kitamura, the author of Audition.
Oh, you read it this week.
I loved it.
I'm so excited to talk
I'm so
about
excited
it.
to talk about it. I really loved it. I really found it interesting. And it's like the perfect book club book because I feel like I can read it 2-3 more times before we even sit down. I sat down and read it in like one sitting. It was really phenomenal. It was right up my alley. And so that link is also going to be live. In order to come, you must download Posh VIP.
Yeah.
And all of the info for that will also be link in bio on our social media.
And there'll be first access for Patreon Wormies, free tickets for Patreon Wormies. And then if you are not on our Patreon, we will have tickets for $10. So we'll see you there.
The book club event is so fun. We got a lot of great sponsors. We're going to have amazing goodie bags. There will be drinks. There will be light bites. There's going to be breakout conversations afterwards. So it's a great place to come, get some free stuff, hear an incredible author talk about her book, and then make a friend and leave. Yeah, so a lot of fun Good Noticings events happening. And if you are a non-New Yorker, don't worry. We're just piloting some things in the city, and we will be bringing them nationally and internationally as soon as we can.
So should we get into this week's topics?
Yes.
I got some bad news.
What?
Kim Kardashian, she did not pass the bar exam.
Oh no, who was going to represent me? She was supposed to be my lawyer.
It's so sad. And bad. Can I say one of my favorite types of headlines re Kim Kardashian not passing the bar is from the ones that are in like the Kardashian camp. I feel like they have some outlets that are really,
Most of them. I think that's one of the things they've done best is
maintain great relationships with the press. And so I've seen a lot of articles about how Kim Kardashian didn't pass the bar, but most people didn't pass the bar actually. And I said, okay, she'll see this and her feelings won't be so hurt.
And I will say, I can't imagine it's easy to pass the bar when you haven't been to college or law school.
Wait, she did go to law school, right? Or no?
She didn't go to law school. She had like a law tutor.
Interesting. She's law homeschooled.
She doesn't have an undergrad degree. She's a lot like these guys you watch on TV. I feel like like that's the whole premise of Suits, right?
Yeah, that he just like knows law so good. And he's cute.
I did watch an interview that she did for All's Fair, which I have to watch. I've heard it's like the worst thing in the world.
I'm really excited to see it.
But that's so up my alley. I love shit that's so bad. But she said that she uses ChatGPT all the time to help her with her law studying, and it often gets things wrong. And I have to say, lawyer Kim, if they're wrong the first, second, and third time, why would you try a fourth time? I guess that's true of the baby bar and her. Like, you know what I mean? I guess she's like, I'm no better than ChatGPT.
Yeah, she took, I think, 3 or 4 tries to pass the baby bar, which is like the first year law exam.
And now she's on the big bar?
Now she's on the big bar and she has not passed it. Apparently, about half of people don't pass the California bar, at least the first time they take it. It's one of the hardest in the country. That being said, what's this for?
I don't know.
I get that like there was that phase where she wanted to be into politics or something.
But then I don't think she knew she was going to be a billionaire back then.
Yeah.
I think that was before the takeoff of Skims and the success of Skims.
Exactly. And now she's got Skims and she's on a TV show. Like, why be a lawyer then?
Women, can they have it all? Sure, but not the law.
But not the law. And can I tell you something I learned from my readings for this week's episode is that law is one of the more dangerous fields for women to try to take over.
Yeah, because
It's going to destroy society.
I have to be honest, you guys, these articles, we read them so that you don't have to. And it was a lot. This was
An intense week.
when I was reading some of the worst memoirs ever put out on humanity in the world. I like couldn't have ever predicted that it could get worse. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know how safe I was with bad memoirs. Anyway,
so Kim Kardashian, it turns out ChatGPT is not going to get you over the finish line on that exam. And it's a huge bummer because I know how badly she wanted to, I guess, just like have passed the bar and then move on. It's so interesting because in her post, she said, I'm not a lawyer yet. I just play one on TV and I'm all in until I pass the bar. But what does all in mean? And what does it mean to be all in until you pass? Like to be like, I'm all in on this until I get that check mark and then we can put this little law thingy away.
I agree with all in. Like I'm all in except for when I'm running my $1 billion business, filming my reality TV show.
Or parenting your like 4 or 5 children.
Yeah.
Wait, her reality TV show and her other TV show?
Plus whatever else she's working on in the background. Plus, you know what I mean? Like
Planning her mom's birthday party.
having outfits every day, a new outfit. It's a lot.
They do like custom cakes for family dinner.
Something I'm really interested in that has just come to my attention is that Kourtney Kardashian does not put her newest son with Travis Barker, Rocky Barker's face on the Kardashians. Something that's like core memory is that video. It's not a video, it's from their show of Kourtney Kardashian pulling Mason Disick out from her own vagina with her 2 hands. Do you remember that?
No. I remember B is for butter and burns. That's when Khloe Kardashian put butter on Kourtney's vagina after she got a burn doing bikini wax.
Wow. I guess we know a lot about Kourtney Kardashian's vagina. But no, she like gave birth to Mason and the crew was in the room with her. And she like reached down and pulled that baby out. And I remember going, some women really are meant for this. Like I am like, those Kardashian women, I've said it once, I'll say it again, they were like put on this earth to be mothers.
I guess what I find very interesting about the blurring of the youngest child's face is not like revoking access to the oldest children. I think if you've decided this is not the right thing to do, which I respect, I think that now that she, you know, has like a new parenting style, I think that's nice. I do think we should not have kids on television. Obviously, we talk about it all the time. But I think it's so interesting to be like, well, you've already seen these ones. They're already kind of like property of the TV show. So what are you going to do? I guess I'll like start better with the new one. Like you can take Penelope off the fucking internet.
Even Rain's what, 7?
Yeah.
If anything, now's the time to get Rain off because he's going to go through like personality phases. So it's an interesting statement she's making on one child's worth.
Yeah. The one that she had with her real family.
Especially the conversations that she has with her siblings who like love pimping out their own children.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Speaking of children, Shay Mitchell, founder of the luggage brand Base, has launched a new business called Reenie that is Korean-inspired skincare for children age 3 and up.
I think it seems like it'll be a general line of body washes and bath products and skin products for children, which isn't crazy. Like children do need lotion and sunscreen and they need to bathe and stuff. But by opening with a face mask and focusing and naming it skincare, what you're doing is taking the preoccupation, which is an obsession that I would say is like akin to an eating disorder, the fear of aging, the way that it very quickly means that you have to get Botox in order to not look older than 22. And to put those fears on children feels insane. I don't think that this is that different than what Jessica Alba was trying to do with The Honest Company. This idea that like all these things touch our children. We want to move in an organic way. What is even in here? We want to remove the microplastics, blah, blah, blah. But the way that they're marketing it by essentially being like, when your kid looks at you using tretinoin, what are you supposed to do? Tretinoin for babies. Like, no, there is something so sick and fucked up. Like, why can't you just say no to your children?
I know. There is this weird thing that's happened where instead of acknowledging, like they'll be like, this is a huge problem. And so instead of fixing it, we will make more products for it. And it's like, what you could just tell your kid no.
Or like allow yourself to, like, why is it that you're always doing skincare? Like, I don't know. I think there is a good question. Like, what are you doing in front of your kid? Is that how you want to raise your kid? When you were smoking cigarettes and your kid said, I want a cigarette, where you're like, yeah, cigarettes for kids, less tobacco, so that they have something to smoke as well.
Bubblegum flavored.
But I mean, it really is like, is this the value you want to pass down to your children? Like obsession with your own looks, especially when they're so young and there's nothing to protect or fix.
I guess the problem is that the answer, I think, for some people is yes. Like, I do think that if you say, is this what you want your children to take away from you? Like, in that same vein, I think that sometimes we have this conversation of like, how fucked up is it that some people genuinely look at their older generations and they say, I would die if I actually looked like you. I would rather like insert poison and do all of these things to myself because becoming you is actually the worst nightmare, which I think is like obviously an insanely cruel thing to think. But, you know, there are people who be like, is it so bad to end up looking like, you know, your mom? And the answer is supposed to be no, but people will say yes.
And it's just so funny because this is like from the same generation that uses the phrase almond mom.
Mm-hmm.
When you're raising your child to be like preventatively on the defense of their flaws, you're not going to make them feel good about themselves. Like a lot of people look at 12 and 13-year-olds in Sephora and think like, oh my God, what are you guys doing here? Like you shouldn't have to do this. Like you're starting it really young and it feels like putting them through the paces of like part of being a woman is just accepting that a lot of your time goes into maintenance and a lot of your energy and money goes into upkeep. To a 3-year-old feels fucked.
And it is just about the larger conversation about environmentalism within skincare and how much of the stuff we use is useless. Like single-use sheet masks are notably bad. And so to build upon that industry by creating a more useless product for a person who absolutely doesn't need a product is truly an insane thing to do. To say like, nobody needs sheet masks, but especially kids. So let's make sheet masks for kids. Why?
I think like organic products for children is always going to be a huge market.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting the way that they've started with this sheet mask.
Yeah. And again, organic products for kids is always going to be a huge market. And it is something that does just exist. So in the article that I read, apparently Shay Mitchell's story starts out with her being like, I couldn't get the face paint off of my kid and I wanted like a clean product to be able to wash her face with, as if we don't have like clean, gentle cleansers already. And also, what the fuck is in the face paint? Like, what do you mean you can't use a strong soap to wash off paint? Paint that won't wash off, apparently.
Well, it seems like they also were talking about like, oh, and when we do makeup and their kids want to do makeup.
Yeah.
I guess makeup's on its way. Like
Yay.
makeup safe for 3-year-olds.
Yay. Can't wait. I can't wait to see these Uggo kids finally get cute.
There's a TikToker named Georgie James who I think does great breakdowns of stuff. She really like researches. And she was talking about whenever Kylie Jenner launches a new product, she always has Stormi use it first in order to get attention on it.
Oh.
So there is like a real, it's an interesting neutral of how do you get a product out there in a way that's adorable and uncriticizable, because we're going to criticize a little girl and say like that makeup doesn't look good on you. And it gets a lot of attention. And then it's like cute watching a little girl pretend to be their mom. And so it is funny. Like it is interesting using little girls to sanitize your marketing strategy of like the hatred of women.
Fun.
Support for Good Noticings comes from Calvin Klein.
There's something so satisfying about the perfect pair of underwear. It sets you up to feel sexy and confident no matter what you're wearing on top. And that's exactly what Calvin Klein is known for. It's iconic under everything.
With the holiday season right around the corner, heat up, give Calvin. Shop their iconic underwear styles and limited edition holiday colors and prints. It's perfect for everybody on your shopping list. Heck, I'd even buy them for myself. Sometimes my favorite person to shop for is me.
Oh, that's the hardest part about the holiday season, when you're scrolling through a gift guide and you go, you know who these gifts would be perfect for?
Listen, you could hope somebody's going to get you a perfect set of Calvin Klein underwear in the holiday colors, or you could just cut out the middleman and get them for yourself. Be your own Santa, I always say.
From classics like holiday underwear to logo tees, iconic denim, cozy sweatshirts, and loungewear.
This season, give them what they really want. Feel holiday heat. Head to ck.com to get the perfect gift for everybody on your list, all in one place.
So Sydney Sweeney has been hella in the news lately. She did an interview with GQ that everyone is yammering about, and Claire took it to the next level, finally got to the bottom of what's Sydney Sweeney.
Well, I have to say this has been long in the making because I feel like she's always in the news, making me go like, what is her deal and what is her angle? More than what is her deal, what is her
angle?
And I feel like it started this summer when she went to Jeff Bezos' wedding. And me and Ashley were both like, was she a hired actress for this wedding? Like, why is he friends with this giant bosomed 28-year-old? Like, what could she have in common with Jeff Bezos? Why would they be friends? I know that her movie, Anyone But You, was through Amazon Prime, I think.
Yeah, but lots of things are on Amazon Prime.
I mean, everybody in the world's on Amazon Prime. That's the problem. So that happened, and I was like, weird. And then she did her American Eagle jeans ad that everybody was like, what is wrong with you? And she refused to acknowledge it. And I was like, okay, crazy. And then she started dating Scooter Braun. And
when was the bathwater in all of this?
Oh my God, I forgot about this. So then there was like the bathwater thing. I think that was post Jeff Bezos.
So she did an ad for Sasquatch Man soap.
First, she did an ad where she's just sitting in the tub. And then the follow-up ad was like, if that wasn't sexy and for men enough, buy
my bathwater.
Which is, I don't think true. I don't think you're allowed to sell somebody's bodily fluids in sanitary products.
Yeah, I also think that that's just so much bathwater to be selling. Like, how many baths
I think it
is
was,
this girl
can I
taking?
say it was like a golden ticket situation, I think.
Oh, like only so many lucky winners can have the bathwater? Sasquatch in general, soap for men. Imagine being like, if you're a man and you're dirty, why not be this hill creature? The clean one.
I'm worried it's gay to be clean. No. It's monster-like. It's literally unknown. They claim to have seen a clean man once, but it's never been caught on camera. Sasquatch.
Buy this dirty water to go with your clean soap for boys.
She's had a lot of bombs too, and I feel like that's important to know. Besides Anyone But You, which was a huge rom-com hit.
By virtue of it filling the category. I've said this once and I'll say it a million times. It's a fine movie to watch. It like does nothing interesting. The plot is obviously preposterous, but it doesn't come back around because of charm and excitement. It just is, and it is enough that people were so thirsty for a rom-com that like, I mean, I'm sorry, if I'd been wandering the desert for days and you said the only drop of water is Sydney Sweeney's bathwater, I would drink it. Like, people were so parched for a rom-com that Anyone But You was a hit.
She had Anyone But You, which was a hit, but then Madam Web flopped its dick off. She had a movie called Americana. Ever heard of it? She had this movie Reality, which I do think you're the only person who's ever seen it.
Reality winner, American Hero.
And then she had Christy that just came out, which also flopped.
I mean, I think it flopped harder than almost anything has flopped in recent history. And recent history has been floppy.
It's the 9th worst debut of all time for this many theaters.
Oof.
Anyway, then she comes out dating Scooter Braun. And I really went, oh my God, she thinks she's in her Reputation era. She really is like, well, if they're going to hate, let's team up. And I really went, well, this is a crazy move because not only are the Swifties a very powerful group, to start dating Taylor Swift's number one enemy is preposterous, but he's also like the disgraced former manager of Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, I mean, Carly Rae Jepsen for a while. But like, he is persona non grata across many of the fandoms.
I mean, people really don't like this guy across the board. And then they are doing these like staged paparazzi, like pap walks in Central Park where they look preposterous.
He has this tiny little loafer with a tiny little sock in it.
I've never seen a foot look so small. How does he stand upon them?
It's like a Lord Farquaad's feet. You look at the photo, it's them dressed up as if they're in When Harry Met Sally on a fall day in Central Park, and they're dressed up hugging on a rock, which you only go to if you're trying to copy Charlotte York's engagement photos for the New York Times. Like, it is a place where you go to signify couple and the coupliest photographs. And there they are. And you look at the photo and you go, wow, Sydney Sweeney has a really delicate, dainty little loafered foot. And then you go, oh my God.
Wait, she's wearing boots.
That's his. It's disgusting to look at. And then the GQ interview came out last week where she was given on a platter. A lot of people were upset that it seemed like your American Eagle ad was joking about white supremacy. And she refused to acknowledge it and then went on to say, and I quote, I think that when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people will hear, which means she hears that you believe that she's pro-white supremacy, and she is actively choosing not to correct that opinion. So any benefit of the doubt that could have been offered to Sydney Sweeney, I believe has to be revoked because she has come out and said, I hear your accusation and I don't care enough to comment. And if you don't care that you're being called a white supremacist, that is akin.
Oh, God. Okay. So who is Sydney Sweeney? Where did she come from? Like, how did this happen?
So Sydney Sweeney is interesting to study. So I've read like 10 to 30 interviews with her. I've really been doing my research and I'm interested because there is such a specific arc. And the thing about Sydney Sweeney is in the last 5 years, she's really blown up. So there's like an interview from every month of her career. And more than anyone else, you can see the initial faux pas, the immediate backlash, and then her immediate response within herself. Like you can see her personality. Like imagine some giant machine and like you press a button and all the little knobs start spinning and pulling inwards. Like you watch her get tighter and tighter and you can see the force field go up.
She's like adding processes. Like she's not saying like, oh, this was the mistake, let me address it. She's saying like in order to prevent any sort of backlash again, or in order to like not feel any sort of backlash again, I need to like change the entire way I approach the public.
Yeah, it's interesting. She's definitely somebody who goes into defense mode and protection mode as opposed to like self-reflection and growth mode.
Mm-hmm.
Which I will say, I do think it's tough when everybody's yelling at you and it's hard to figure out what's valid and what's not when the voices are just as loud every time.
Yeah.
The fun thing about Sydney Sweeney is there is a very specific lore that she loves about herself. And I think, you know, as all lore is, I'm sure it's mostly true, but I think a different person could have come up with a different story. But this is her truth. She grew up in a small town in Washington. It's funny because like you really see the journalistic integrity of pop culture journalism because sometimes they're like, she's from Idaho. Sometimes she's from Spokane. Sometimes she's from a small town that has like nobody living in it.
She's from like a general area on the Washington-Idaho border.
Yes. She grew up there. She comes from like a lower middle class background. Her mom was in fact a lawyer. And I guess she became a stay-at-home mom because it was just too tough to balance both. She has a little brother. Her dad is in hospitality. Something that people get wrong about her, even on Wikipedia, is that her dad is a doctor. He's not. I wonder if she said he's in hospitality, somebody heard he's in hospital, and they just ran with that.
That actually feels true.
That's what I've deduced. And she went on record and was like, I've emailed Wikipedia as myself being like, can you please change this? And she goes, I wish my dad was a doctor growing up, but he wasn't. And I do think it's upsetting to her specifically because something that's very important to her that you know is that she did not grow up wealthy. She grew up on the outskirts. She feels like an outsider. When she was 12 years old, an indie production came to town. She really wanted to audition. And this is key in the Sydney Sweeney lore. She went to her parents with a 5-year business plan about her becoming an actress. And they allowed her to audition. She got the role. And then by the time she was 13, they had moved to LA to allow her to pursue her dreams of being an actress.
Interesting. Okay. Obviously, we'll get to this later, but I feel like from what you've told me so far, she wants to be portrayed as like hardworking and like smart and whatever. But I feel like a lot of pieces of her story, because she is so specific with the way she speaks to the press, it feels like highlights from other successful versions of backstories we like the creating a business plan to convince your parents is Emma Stone. And I feel like every piece in her story, I'm like, oh, that's Jennifer Lawrence, that's Emma Stone.
Well, she's and people give her credit for this. She's a great study of Hollywood. And what I think is very interesting about her, and then we'll get to my conclusion, is she's a brilliant study of the business of Hollywood, but not necessarily the stardom of Hollywood. And I think we're missing like this charisma. Like men love her because she has big boobs and she's never going to make you feel bad for seeing. Like she goes on record constantly saying, I never question the filmmakers I work with. I love all the filmmakers. I'm proud to show off my body. We'll get to it. There's a line in the GQ article where the woman goes, oh, you're wearing like a push-up bra. She goes, those are my real. Like she has a body. That's a tool. And it's a tool that'll make her rich.
Yeah.
And I do think she's a study of the business of it all. And I think she probably looked and said, what you need is a great backstory. So she also has a real chip on her shoulder about what she's overcome to become famous.
Yeah. And that also I want to say, like, I don't think her story isn't real. I'm just saying that I think she's picked the parts that she wants to highlight based on what she's seen work. Like she's saying, oh, this is something that worked.
Yes.
That people respond to positively. So I'm going to highlight that within my own story.
I also think, and this is something you've said to me in private conversations, is there's a real kind of like MAGA entitlement of no matter how rich you end up being or how quickly you get your success, if even for a moment you didn't have as much as you felt you deserved, there's a lot of resentment.
I feel like she just operates with such a chip on her shoulder that she deserves. Okay, this is going to get me in trouble, but it's almost like Swiftian in the way that if you've ever criticized, like there's no room for criticism. You can either appreciate her art, you can appreciate her, or you can shut the fuck up if you have a problem. It's not your place to say.
Well, there's this weird, bizarre idea of the meritocracy in that, like, well, I worked harder than everyone I knew, so I should be more successful than anyone I've ever heard of.
Yes.
And if it's not happening exactly, then it's not fair. Okay, so anyway, back to the story. So the story is by 13, they had moved to LA. Because it was so expensive in LA, they lost their house in Washington for a while. There was a lot of problems. She talked about they lived in a motel room. They shared one room. Her and her mom shared the bed. Her brother and her dad shared the couch. And she's like, yeah, there was a lot of hardships. By the time I turned 18, she's like, I had $800 in my pocket and my parents had divorced and we had made a lot of sacrifices as a family for me to pursue this dream. And she even says as recently as 2023, like, I feel very guilty about that. Like, I feel like they all made sacrifices for me, so I have to make it work for them because of what they gave up. And the interviewer, Daniel Daddario, goes, oh, but do you feel like that's your fault they got divorced? And she goes, well, it depends on what fight I'm having with my parents. But sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. So there is a lot of pressure on her to make it. But I do wonder, like, why did you let your 13-year-old move? Like, why were you forcing your younger son to share a couch with his dad so that your other daughter could make, like, I don't know, like, you had a house and a job in Spokane.
And okay, so here's my issue with this whole story is that it is entirely a choice that did in fact pan out.
Yeah, you guys bet big, won big, so quit your complaining. That's what you thought would happen.
And I guess the thing is, I don't care really that there was like 5 hard years in order to now be millionaire. Like, she has several more than $1 million houses. And so I think that most people, if you said, would you have 5 hard years to spend the rest of your life living in a $13 million Miami mansion? They would say yes. That is just like a very lucrative return on a tough investment, which was 5 hard years. And I think a lot of people have 5 hard years and then no $13 million mansion at the end of the road.
Okay, so here's also where I'm very confused because the other side of Sydney Sweeney, beyond the hard worker, lower middle class girl, is she's so smart. And I think I remember at one point people talking about how high her IQ was.
What the fuck is an IQ? I'm sick of that shit. Nobody has an IQ.
But you know, like, that business plan is very much part of her lore. She's a girl who reads a lot. She is always like, I love when people underestimate me and I can show them that I'm so much better at that. She talks a lot about loving the business end of Hollywood. Of course, she's an executive producer on Anyone But You. She had her breakout roles in like 2018, 2019. By 2020, she had a production company. And here we are, 2025. She's already put out 3 movies. So like, she worked quickly, but part of this lore is that she was even the valedictorian of her high school and she was going to college for business school. And I guess my question is, how were you the valedictorian of your high school in Washington State if your family was living in a 1-room motel in LA?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I feel like these are the things when I say, like, you get to pick your own lore. I wonder if it's possible that they moved to LA for a pilot season.
Like, if they were back and forth for a while.
Yeah. We were in a motel for a couple months while I did pilot season, which makes sense because if you already have a house somewhere, it is very expensive to then have a secondary pied-à-terre in LA. But that's not the story that's getting told of like, oh, my parents were willing to like be uncomfortable for a few months where I tried this thing out. It's very like, we were in a motel. And like, even, you know, later she goes, even with 2 Emmy noms, she says her sense of being a Hollywood outsider remains. I had no idea getting into this industry how many people have connections. I started from ground zero. I know how fucking hard it is. Now I see how someone can just walk in a door and I'm like, wow, I worked my fucking ass off for 10 years for this. And it's beyond even just Hollywood nepotism. She talks about when they were filming The White Lotus, they were all secluded because it was during COVID on that 4 seasons. And at the end of filming, the hotel opened back up to regular clientele. And she said, it became clear that I did not belong among the clientele. I would go to breakfast in my sweatshirt and pajama shorts, then get the most disgusting glares from the guests that I dared to show up like that. So she really is obsessed with being like, I'm different than everybody. As Ashley said, so in 2023, she bought a $3 million LA home. In 2024, she bought a $9 million Bel Air mansion that she plans on flipping. And then later in 2024, she bought a $13 million house in Florida for her family to have as a vacation home. These interviews are from when she's 24, 25, 26. Oh, I'm sorry that you didn't get to buy $25 million worth of property until you were 25. Yeah, you have struggled harder than most people.
Yeah, and it is this weird thing where I agree. It sucks, I think, to have worked hard, to have struggled, and then you are working with Nepo babies who haven't for a second even had to audition or whatever. You know what I mean? There is that thing that I understand a lot of people have a chip on their shoulder about, but for her, it seems to have overwhelmingly worked out. I think that this has started the wave that turned into a tidal wave against her, is that she has such a chip on her shoulder when she still has so much more than anyone reading the interview. Like, she has less than the people she's in a room with and more than anyone who's watching her stuff. And so it's hard to read when that's her angle the entire time. And then there's nothing to balance it out that's like charismatic and fun.
Yeah, so she's really private. And so it's funny, I read this interview from Chicago Splash, May 2019, which
Ooh, splash.
I assume the reason she did it was because her boyfriend, then fiance, now ex-fiance, was living in Chicago. And she says, Chicago is such a beautiful city with the nicest people. I made more friends in the months I've been visiting here than the 5 years I've been in Los Angeles, says the Spokane, Washington native. I really appreciate the normalcy I can have here. And this is actually the only interview I could find, and way back in 2019, where she talks about having a boyfriend. Anything after this, she refuses to acknowledge him at all. She doesn't wear her engagement ring to interviews. And if you ask about her business production partner, who was her ex-fiance, she won't acknowledge anything about him. She just says, I like working with smart people. So 2019 was the last time she even acknowledged having a boyfriend publicly. And she says, I keep my private life private because I need to be separate from the characters, separate from my work, so I can feel like a human. That very much is her defense mechanism. I'll give them nothing. That way they can project whatever they want onto me, but I know it's not me. And that comes through a lot in the GQ interview, that her way of protecting herself is to give nothing, so that when people make assumptions about her, she knows that they're based on nothing.
I think that is a fair way to proceed in Hollywood if you aren't courting what I believe she's courting, which is stardom. She's not trying to be a working actress. She is trying to be a movie star. And I do think that there is a difference. And I do think that what you have to give the public in order to achieve that level is different, because that is part of the job. It's two different jobs, actress and movie star.
Yes. And she wants to be a brand ambassador. Anyway, yeah.
Yes. And so I think that, for her to sit here and be so resentful that people would even ask her the questions that you ask a movie star, then you have to go for a different job, which is working actress who is not the star. You are a best friend. You are a supporting actress. You just can't do both.
Or you have to be supremely talented.
But we were talking about this yesterday, and there are very few people who have found this footing in Hollywood where they can be a very successful revenue-driving actress and project creating actress that for no point in their career gave it to the public a little bit.
I was saying, Rachel McAdams, for example, seems very private to me. And now she goes, not in her 20s. She was dating Ryan
Gosling, and she was straddling him on the stage for Best Kiss at the MTV Movie Awards. Yeah. And that was for the public. She was doing things to cement her place so that in her 30s and 40s, she could be private. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily right. I'm just saying it is what it is.
I also want to say, after this thing about how much she loves Chicago more than LA and how she made more friends there than in LA, she in 2023 says that she still thinks of Spokane as her home and tries to spend as much time as she can there. And that's her home more than LA. At this point, she, I guess, was in escrow on her second multi-million-dollar LA man. But you know what I mean? And I am also girl, you have to give it to her. She works her ass off. She's got 100 projects in the works at all times. I'm when are you even anywhere? It's so funny how important it is to her to let people know she does not see herself as an LA person. Mm-hmm. She's an outsider in LA, even though she is now one of LA's biggest stars.
So her first roles were 2019, right? 2020 is when she blew up.
Her breakout roles were in Sharp Objects on HBO, and then also The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay.
And then also she was in this queer indie comedy called Everything Sucks. That was her first real role.
Okay.
I don't think that did huge stuff, but that kind of got her foot in the door. And then she was cast in White Lotus and Euphoria at the same time.
Okay.
And that's where things really blew up. Euphoria was the second most watched TV show on HBO after Game of Thrones. So then through Euphoria, she became huge. That's exactly when she turned around and made her production company. And that was in 2020. Now it's 2025 and here we are. Anything But You already came out last year.
Yeah.
She turned shit around quick.
And she has 5 movies coming out this year.
Mm-hmm. So in 2022, she says, I'm a very open person. I love to talk about everything, noting the fact that it eats at her that she can't open up about Madam Web. I eventually learned that she's preparing for the role with fight training, movement training, and something called Reformer Core Pilates, and that she was drawn to the film because she likes the personal struggles that the character goes through.
Something called Reformer Core Pilates. That's so 2022. What could Pilates be?
I just think what's important to me about this interview from The Hollywood Reporter in 2022 is that, she says she's a very open person. I think anybody who saw the GQ article and anybody who's heard from her at all, she's an incredibly private person. And that's kind of always been true. But I wonder if here she didn't realize how private she was, or she hadn't felt comfortable admitting that she's a private person. But whatever it is, here she self-identifies as an open person to a press person, whereas later she's obviously and openly private.
Okay.
And then I also think it's interesting that she's talking about how amazing Madam Web is. She's it's so different than what everyone else is in right now. I think people are going to love it, which is interesting because then after Madam Web bombs, she says, I was just hired as an actress in it. So I was just along for the ride for whatever was going to happen.
Very different from her reformer core fight training.
Oh my God, you guys are going to love it.
investment in
It's
the
so
role.
different. Whereas Dakota Johnson's like, I always knew it sucked. And I do think something about Sydney Sweeney is if you ask her about any project she's ever been in, it was the most incredible experience. Everybody was amazing to work with. There's such incredible messaging and the struggles, and it's an importance. Like, she has those canned answers fucking down. So in 2023, she does this interview where she gets what I think is probably her first amount of like huge backlash. In it, she declines to comment on her relationship status. She doesn't wear a ring to the interview, even though she was seen wearing an engagement ring in paparazzi photos. She says here, if I wanted to take a 6-month break, I don't have income to cover that. I don't have someone supporting me. I don't have anyone I can turn to pay my bills or call for help. And they say, surely HBO paychecks afford a lifestyle immune to rising gas prices. They don't pay actors like they used to. And with streamers, you no longer get residuals. I have to pay 5% to my lawyers, 10% to my agents, 3% or something like that to my business manager. I have to pay my publicist every month, and that's more than my mortgage. It's not that she wants people to feel badly for her, but she is adamant that the luxuries of the job not gloss over the realities of the business. To stay relevant as a young actress, particularly one so deeply entrenched in and reliant on the internet generation, requires investment. There's a lot of press to do, and the associated costs, styling, tailoring, hair and makeup, travel aren't always covered by the network. She says that this is what motivated her to pivot into brand deals, taking gigs as a Miu Miu ambassador, starring in an Armani beauty campaign. If I just acted, I wouldn't be able to afford my life in LA. I take deals because I have to.
And the thing is, that's true, especially for that time in her life. When we read Anna Kendrick's book, she had this part of her life where she was promoting Up in the Air, which was nominated for Oscars. She was nominated for an Oscar, and she was still living in like a 3-bedroom apartment
with roommates and being like, hey, instead of putting me up at the Four Seasons, could you just give me the cash so I could pay rent? Because I can't really afford, because I can't work right now, my part-time job, to pay my rent. So I'm promoting this movie that didn't pay me anything.
Yeah. And I believe her. I mean, this is what the entire SAG strike was about, was that these streamers are able to pay like web series rates because they were initially classified as web series. And a lot of the people who weren't big names going into these projects, were probably getting pretty bad deals. So when she was a nobody who signed on for The White Lotus, for Euphoria, for The Handmaid's Tale, like for all these projects, all on streamers in such a short amount of time, I'm sure she was much less rich than her level of fame. But I also think she was probably a lot more rich than most people. You know, we see this with influencers all the time, right? They'll be like, oh, I just wanted to order takeout, so I ordered this like fat box of sushi. Yeah. And you're like,
that was $180.
And that's your just like Sunday night takeout. And people have started thinking that that's like a normal lifestyle to achieve, and it isn't.
I also do think there is that time where if you're getting paparazzi'd and stuff, you do have to look a certain way. And it isn't. I mean, the maintenance on keeping your hair, skin, nails, clothes done, it is high. And I get that it is a business expense. But I mean, I think you see here that she doesn't know what's likable and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
So I find this quote very interesting too, because of the way she talks about pivoting into brand deals and how clearly that was not part of her initial quote unquote business plan, her 5-year business plan. But I think she clearly pivoted into it to like make the money. And I think the blowback she received from this interview, almost I can see the way it turned her gears and said, fuck it. If they're mad at me for making money, I'll just make the most money anyway. Like if nothing I do makes them happy, I'll just do whatever I can for the most money. And I feel like you start to see the beginning of it here.
Yeah. And I think that you see this with every controversy she's been a part of, that she gets more and more resentful that people would criticize her because she's trying her best. And here's another factor in it is, like you said, she's a very studied actress, like of Hollywood mechanisms. She's spent a lot of time like studying how to be successful in Hollywood, and you can see her following a specific blueprint. And I think that when it doesn't work out the way she thought it would, like when her plans aren't panning out exactly as she expected, she becomes very resentful of the people that threw it off track, the audience, the interviewer, whoever. And I think that a lot of it is partially that she's pissed that you're mad at her, but even more so, she's pissed that you're not like reacting the way you're supposed to. Like you're not doing your role.
Yes.
Which is adoration of her.
It's just so interesting because like, so in this interview, she also says, while fame has expanded her awareness of the way the world works, it's having a chilling effect on her personal life. I can feel my bubble of who I can talk to and share intimate things with and have relationships with shrinking. That is so different than what she says in GQ, where she goes, I have no idea what's going on with my fame. She says to the GQ interviewer last week, I don't feel any of my fame except for when I turn on my phone. I have the same group of friends I've always had. I'm very grounded. I go home to Spokane. I turn off my phone.
I'm just Sid. Wait, I had to do my impression of it.
Yeah. Ashley has an impression she's been working on.
Yeah, hold on. The key to sounding like Sydney Sweeney is having a tiny bit of water in your mouth. I'm just Sid.
I'm just sad.
You didn't have any water in your mouth.
I know. Anyway, she's done being honest. And I went up and I watched that video that came out years ago that's been resurfacing where she goes on her live and she's like, when you say these mean things, it hurts people. You have to stop being mean. And even there, she says, I would never come on here crying about this, but I have to let you guys know that when you say something mean, it hurts. And so I guess that's always been in her. She has an awareness, like, don't ever let them see you cry, but she used to not be as good about it as she is now.
Yeah.
2023, she admits to Variety, sometimes I feel beat up about it. It's hard to sit back and watch and not be able to stand up for yourself about the hate she gets online. And so here she's still being a bit honest, a bit vulnerable. And she also addresses one of the controversies was that her mom had a 60th birthday party where people were dressed in MAGA clothes and she got a lot of hate for it. I thought she didn't comment publicly about it really, but apparently to them she said, Sweeney, unprompted, brings up that her father wasn't at the birthday party, an event she threw for her mom's 60th in 2022 that drew social media opprobrium. Photos of the celebration showed guests in what appeared to be Blue Lives Matter garb and MAGA-styled red caps, later revealed to read, Make 60 Great Again. There were so many misinterpretations, she says. The people in the pictures weren't even my family. The people who brought the things that people were upset about were actually my mom's friends from LA who have kids that are walking outside in the Pride Parade. And they thought it would be funny to wear things because they were coming to Idaho.
I guess I feel that people who are adamantly against what's happening with Trump wouldn't wear it as a joke either.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that the people wearing Trump stuff at her mom's birthday party were doing it ironically, but I do
believe they had kids that were walking in pride parades.
I do find it interesting that here, unprovoked, she defends herself and her family, and she's upset about it. So then, of course, there's the whole situation in terms of publicity because she's such a private person who claims to like not be on her phone, not care about the social media of it all. But obviously, she's very business savvy. So it's interesting because if you guys recall, when they were filming Anyone But You down in Australia, there was such an uproar because it seemed like Glenn and Sydney were getting close together. Ultimately, Glenn broke up with his girlfriend, or she broke up with him over it. And then there was rumors that her and her fiance were breaking up,
which ultimately did happen.
Yeah, but contrary to this like persona she's put out as a girl who just like never checks her phone and doesn't care what they say, in a media environment that's outside even a gifted actor's control, there can be a certain pleasure in leaning into the narrative. They want it, Sweeney says. It's fun to give it to them. So that was all in 2023, around the Anyone But You, around Madam Web, and then of course Madam Web bombs. And then of course something called Eden came out and bombed. I mean, she has just been in bomb, 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 bomb. So then of course we have, as I've already said, the Jeff Bezos wedding, which seems to align herself publicly and personally with the moneyed ruling class that she felt so on the outside of. You know what I mean? She starts off, she goes, I can't even eat breakfast at a Four Seasons hotel because everybody thinks I'm such an outsider freak, to she is at the most expensive wedding of all time, aligning herself not with other actors and contemporaries, but with producers, the head of the company. And then she puts out this Sasquatch ad, which is, she loves being taken seriously. She wants people to know she's a good actress. She uses her body as a tool. Here she is absolutely just like selling herself to the horned up dog men. And then she does this American Eagle jeans.
The horned up dog men. No, exactly.
And she won't speak on it. Somebody who does try to be like, oh, I care about domestic violence. Like I use my art to show my values, but yet refuses to acknowledge. So here she is. First, she's being asked, a big thing that happened to you this year is that you ended your engagement. You're a private person. Your ex-fiance is a private person. So for a lot of us in the media, it was really surprising how much of a news story that was. Did you sense your own fame change this year? And she says, no, I surround myself with a really, really strong group of people who have been in my life since I was little. And they take me out of Hollywood, take me out of this bubble and remind me what the real world is. And that's where I exist. And so the aspect and the idea of fame, it doesn't apply to my personal life. I'm just Sid. Say it.
I don't have my water.
Yeah, your water. Your water's right there.
I'm just Sid.
I'm just Sid and I don't run in that world, which is obviously like an interesting departure from who she used to be, somebody who struggled with it and her circle's getting smaller. Clearly, she's just like, of course, her fame has gotten huge and obviously it's impacted her. This idea that she just turns off her phone and ignores it is not true, but this is the facade she's going with. She's fully committed to having like a fake persona that doesn't care.
And something that's so interesting about this GQ interview that we haven't really mentioned yet, but obviously, you know, if you've watched it, is that this wall that she's built up feels almost physically present at the GQ interview. She is so separate, body language, you know, cadence, everything about her presence in this interview is closed.
Yeah.
She's so away from the interviewer. And something that I want to talk about that I find so interesting about this backlash to the GQ interview is the way people were upset with the interviewer and the way that people felt the interviewer should have pushed her more. You see, minutes and minutes go by of the interviewer trying and failing to connect. You see a bizarre moment at the beginning of the interview where the interviewer is kind of resigned to being like, I am not going to get much. She tries to kind of joke around and laugh a little bit. And then you see her face change where she realizes this is going to not be a fun and flirty interview. I'm going to be trying to yank whatever I can.
I think by asking 3 separate times and in 3 separate ways and in ways that she kept cleaning it up and she got as close to as possible to just saying, and so do you disavow white supremacy? And Sydney won't engage, and I think that's the answer we're looking for.
Exactly.
If you don't care enough, if somebody says people think you're a white supremacist and you go, well, I don't care what they think.
Yeah, and what I found so interesting is the way people were saying, she should have pushed. I think asking 3 times is what I would call pushing. And then you have to ask, like, what do you want from her? Like, do you want things to become genuinely contentious? Because she is there to interview on behalf of GQ magazine for a cover story. Yeah. In the era of Alex Cooper style interviews, there is not actually a ton of room to really push on more controversial topics because celebrities have become very comfortable in a space where in order to get major publicity, they can just go on Therapists with Jake Shane and have him say, I love you when you dive into the water in front of the Sydney Opera House and anyone but you. That's so funny. And so to have an interviewer asking a couple of times this question, like that is what pushing is. Like, do you want her to say fuck you and storm off? Because then she's not getting the interview. She is still a person with a job.
Yeah. And also I do think she gives the audience enough to draw a conclusion.
Yeah.
She didn't just say it once and walk away. She said it 3 separate times.
And she didn't say it ambiguously.
And here's something that I missed when I watched the video. I don't know if it was in the video, but it was in the written part that I find so interesting. And it's kind of the summation of my beliefs about Sydney Sweeney. The interviewer says, by some reports, American Eagle's stock price went up 38%. Does that make it less painful to be at the center of that much conversation if you know it really worked for the business that you're partnering with? I was aware of the numbers as it was going. So when I saw all the headlines of in-store visits were down a certain percentage, none of it was true. It was all made up and nobody could say anything because the company was in their quiet period. So it was all just a lot of talk. And because I knew at the end of the day what the ad was for and it was great jeans, it didn't affect me one way or the other.
In that interview, when the interviewer says, did you expect it to go so viral? She goes, I did a jeans ad. I wear jeans. I'm wearing jeans right now. Like, I love jeans. It's patronizing to the audience to have looked into an ad as anything beyond the surface is a choice.
Later in the interviewer talks about a scene in the, the housemaid or the
one with Amanda Seyfried.
And she goes, you're sitting in this theater room and you're wearing a push-up bra. And she goes, those are my real boobs. And the interviewer goes, oh, fact-checked in real time. It's interesting. She'll stand up for her own boobs. She'll be like, no, I have huge boobs with or without a push-up bra. That's just my regular boobs. Like, that's where she'll stop and correct
the narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, she said when there's something that she wants to speak out on, she'll speak out about it.
Yeah. And so what she's worried about is that, she is as hot as you think she is. And that it's interesting that she's comforted by the fact that ultimately it was a successful business ad that the American Eagle has said they'll team with her again. She is somebody who believes she's in her villain arc, doesn't care about anything but making money. She doesn't care if the movie's bombed. I know she just said that she does with Christy, but that's not true, I don't think. I think ultimately she wants to make a lot of money. She wants to be the owner. I wouldn't be surprised if she gave up acting altogether. I think she is somebody who wanted to be successful and rich, and she was going to be successful and rich at anything she chose. She just so happened to choose something at 12 that she feels married to. And I'm absolutely sure the Scooter Braun thing is PR. Yeah. She is such a private person. She's been recently photographed with her own ex-fiance getting dinner. I don't think Scooter Braun is okay with you getting dinner with your ex-fiance. It's just such an obvious PR stunt. And it's interesting for a woman who stays so private to be like, what I want people to publicly think about me is bad. I feel like she is somebody who feels very put upon, and to not care that you're being thought of white supremacist as long as the money is there is an indictment on who she is. And it's interesting. She's just I don't care. She's going for the money.
Yeah, and you really see her refusing to at all acknowledge any valid criticisms because there have been invalid criticisms. And you see this all the time with very famous people or even medium famous people. I saw it when I worked for Leandra Medine, who founded Man Repeller. When she would get a wave of criticism, she was very incapable of processing any of it because there was invalid criticism lumped in with the very valid criticism. She didn't know how to parse through it. And that is hard, but I do think it's pretty crucial when you're in the public eye because why would you know everything? So you either have to be able to sort through your own criticism or you have to build a team that can sort through the criticism for you and help you from there.
Or you could go right.
Or you can go right.
And just be like, well, then I don't care about anybody. I don't care about offending anybody. I don't care about anything besides making money. But I guess the interesting thing to see with Sydney Sweeney will be, does this long-term bet pay off for her? Because clearly she's still one of the hottest young stars in America. Will these right-wing gooners be gooning to her in theaters? There's a huge market on that side of the aisle, and yet are those the people going to theaters supporting the thing that she claims to care a lot about, which is like the craft of acting?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see because I think that Hollywood itself is very split right now. Hollywood is built off of people who are in the arts, who care about people and who care about messaging and who care about like what they're putting out into the world. On one hand, you have the Zendayas, who there is a blind item right now that Zendaya will not work with Sydney Sweeney at all for Euphoria promotion. They've filmed season 3. They're going to be promoting it soon.
I do also want to caveat that I looked into that rumor. It has not yet been substantiated by anybody, and it's all coming from Daily Mail, which is a publication that often comes for Black women, especially in entertainment. And I think it's important for us to remember that whereas I think with us and our values, we go, oh, kudos to Zendaya for standing up for what she believes in.
Oh, it's like a diss. They're making up a bad story about Zendaya.
Yeah, they think they're hurting her by being like, look how petty and stupid the left is. Like, poor baby, big boobed Sydney Sweeney does a jeans ad and Zendaya won't even work with her now. So I do think it's important to know that we don't know if that's true. And it's also not necessarily in her benefit.
But I also think we'll find out.
Yeah. When they start doing press.
I think that'll be interesting to see.
There's also rumors of her and Zendaya having beef because Sydney was caught liking thirst traps of Tom Holland.
Okay.
Years ago on Twitter.
Hilarious.
And I will say, I'm like, is that even her type? She seems to like an old uggo.
Yeah.
She loves an old uggo, which is something I've heard actually from somebody who knew her, that she as a teenager in Hollywood knew how to walk into a room and find the oldest, most powerful man in the room. And even if it was a birthday party, she was like, which dad is most important? Her superpower.
Very powerful.
Well, more powerful than whatever the fuck we got going on.
No, I meant that earnestly. That's very powerful. Anyway, I guess it's interesting because there are people in Hollywood who I do believe this matters to them. And then there are also the people who are in charge of Hollywood, the studios, the Jeff Bezoses of the world, who are buying out more studios, who prefer a white supremacist. So, obviously, in my world where I'm yay, Zendaya, I love this blind item about you. This is a good thing. There is the equal and opposite, way more money having world where it's not a good thing.
Anyway, so TLDR or even TLDL, too long didn't listen. It does seem that Sydney Sweeney in the past 5 to 6 years has taken her fame and decided that her new public persona is going to be shut out the world, pretend I don't care, pretend I haven't heard it, and go for gold. Bricks of gold.
It's a villain era. And what will the next era bring? Could be anything. Because I do think that we are culturally goldfish. I see there being a version of Sydney Sweeney in 5 years. I don't mean a good thing, but it could be just a completely different thing. And then there will be people on the internet saying, are we just forgetting this? And then there'll be someone responding to them on the internet saying, can't we just leave women alone?
Yeah. It takes one fun dive bar dancing video for everybody to change their tune.
I mean, she could adopt a puppy and everything's different. And finally, did women, liberal feminism, girl thoughts, stuff bitches be saying, did it ruin the workplace?
I know. It's so weird because work used to be so fun. And I know historically, everyone always loved going to work. I know you ask anybody and they'd say, if I could do anything, it'd be working more. And now people want to work less. So whose fault is it? I guess they found out women, huh? So this was a big article that came out in the New York Times this week. A lot of people were talking about it. Of course, we had to read it. It was a transcribed podcast. So I started reading it. I read for about 30 minutes and I was struggling to follow. And then when I heard it was a podcast, I go, well, maybe it'd be better if I listened. And then I started listening to it. And even though I did start understanding the dynamic, which was that it was this man hosting 2 women and they were honestly having the back and forth, not them versus him, that clicked a bit more for me. But I have to say, it was so fucking unlistenable that I only made it 3 minutes. I did even less listening than reading. And then Ashley said, well, I read the original article, which I had thought to do, and she sent me the link by this woman, Helen, about the feminization of the workplace.
Helen Andrews, you bitch.
And I said, okay, I'll just read the original article. And then I said, this is awful. I tried to read it. I couldn't get through it. I just had no idea what the fuck she was talking about. I said to Ashley, I go, this is like when a toddler is trying to explain to you their dream, but their dream is evil. It was just so disconnected from any reality that I've ever known. I felt like it must be how Republicans or like right-wingers feel when they listen to me and Ashley. I was just like, what are you talking about? Nothing you're saying is true. This is all just like made up nonsense that you're like pulling out of your ass, and I couldn't get through it. So luckily Ashley fought harder.
So I read through it, and first I want to talk about the outlet that the original essay appeared in. It originally appeared in Compact magazine. Compact is an online magazine founded in 2022, and it seeks a new political center devoted to the common good. Believing that political forces, not economic ones, should determine our common life, we draw on the social democratic tradition to argue for an order marked by authentic freedom, social stability, and shared prosperity. Though we have definite opinions, we proudly publish writers with whom we disagree.
One of the things that struck me about even that is I feel like I would be agreeing with some of the stuff I was hearing on this podcast. And I'd be like, okay, it seems like we're aligned. Why are we on different sides? And then suddenly they would take a harsh left and be saying something so fucking different than anything I've ever heard in my life. And I just like couldn't get a grasp on what was going on.
Yeah, I guess one of the big problems is that, what's his name?
Doug Hart or something, Duthart.
Yeah. Ross Dufart is a conservative opinions writer and the host of the New York Times' Conservative Opinions podcast. And then you have the other lady who is also a thinker and writer and not feminist, who comes in to kind of argue with Helen's piece.
Okay, so that's what the premise was. He was essentially saying, well, I can't yell at you because I'm a man, so I'll find a woman to do my dirty work for me.
Yes.
Because I agree with you that women are the problem, but I think they're a problem in a different way.
Yes, and it sounded exactly like most conversations we see now between the Republicans and the Democrats, where you have one person arguing something that is so outside the realms of reality, and then you have the quote-unquote Democrat coming in and giving credence to the argument, like what they're saying is reasonable, and then also saying some kind of fucked up shit. And you're like, actually, the fact that you even sunk to the level of this conversation at all is too on the right for you to call yourself a Democrat. Luckily, both people here call themselves conservatives, but it really was interesting to hear it out loud and be like, the Democrats think that they're Democrats and they're the argument lady. In the original conversation, the things that stick out is that Helen Andrews has posed that the problem in the workplace right now is woke culture, which is essentially her word for all things DEI, all things that aren't like the tradition masculine culture at work.
I found it so interesting because she does call wokeness essentially this attempt in institutions and workplaces to allow for equality amongst race and sex, but she's obviously not allowed to call out race. I think she's like smart enough to know, she's woke enough to know that she'll get in trouble if she starts being like, and now black people want equal pay. So she calls all things that are like equalizing another human being to a white man feminization. It's funny.
You and Ezra Klein, girlfriends.
Well, it's just really funny because I'm like, very clearly a lot of these things fall under civil rights as well, like an equality between races, but she can't say that. So she has to be like, wanting black people to be equal? That's some woman shit.
Yeah, I mean, one of her big problems, like the conclusion of her original piece is essentially that HR is a prohibitive force stopping CEOs from achieving their goals.
I will say, when God invented man, when he said, and on the seventh day, he said, I'm going to create a group of people and an experiment because I want to see how much innovation can be made. I want to see how much profit can be extracted for one guy at the top. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
I love this world that like, well, you and me, we debate whether or not women are equal to men, but what we can all agree on is that the most important people in the world are a CEO. The whole purpose of all 8 billion of us is to see how many great CEOs can be created in a world.
Exactly. And what I was going to say is the thing that I found most interesting about this topic being brought to a larger platform is that the original piece was itself so preposterous and so lacking in reasonable statements.
Yes. So one of her big example is the Harvard Larry Summers guy who got fired because he said, quote unquote, off the record, which she's like, if he says it off the record, you don't get to hold it against him. But he basically said the reason there's not as many women as men in STEM is because women just aren't as good.
Fundamentally, they don't have the brain powers. So they start out by addressing the problem that both women here agree on, which is that men and women are fundamentally different. And they believe feminism is insisting that men and women are equal and exactly the same. I guess I would argue that this isn't even based in reality. Like, I think people would agree that there are differences between men and women. The problem is that we've decided inherently that the way men are by default is the better version. And like, that's the thing that we're fighting against. So they use an example of basketball and the debate, like the ongoing debate of like whether or not the 3-point line for women should be closer or further, because does it make sense for it to be equally hard or equally in the same spot based on like men and women's physicalities? And the women like insist that it should be exactly where men are because we need to prove that we are as accomplished as men or something. But what I think they're missing, and like obviously no one in this podcast is going to say, is that the problem is not that women aren't going to deem themselves as accomplished, but that men are going to diminish the women's basketball numbers if it's in a different spot. It's not that women are like, but I want to feel as good. Because I don't think anyone really cares if we didn't live in a society that fundamentally would then say, well, theirs is closer, so it's easier, so none of their records count. Like nothing they do
Well,
counts.
people say that about women's tennis all the time.
Yeah.
They say, well, Serena Williams is only playing against women, so it's easier. And I'm like, okay, but she is a woman. Like, I don't, like...
Exactly.
And the men are playing against men as men.
So if we didn't have people diminishing the accomplishments of women based on the fact that they were accomplished by a woman, then it wouldn't matter if we compared it to men. But because people are going to sit there and say, like, what men do is inherently more impressive and better and whatever, everything a woman does is held up to a man. So it makes sense that women are, like, trying to prove all things equal, we still kick your ass. Anyway, that's the thing, is throughout this entire conversation, none of these arguments are based in actual reality.
Well, they also just deem certain things true that I'm like, that feels debatable. Like, I know they go, well, only women gossip and cancel culture is a function of gossiping. So if anybody gets fired, that's gossiping. I mean, at one point she tries to defend McCarthyism as actually a good version of cancel culture because at least the men were doing something. And I'm like, why is that better or worse? And the craziest thing she says is she goes, well, with McCarthyism, if you just took the loyalty pledge, that was that. That's actually like not fucking true. You know what I mean?
And then you have the other lady firing back and saying, well, then wouldn't these overarching office pledges to not be sexist, like, shouldn't that be fine?
Yeah.
If you're just agreeing to not be sexist, like, wouldn't that be okay then?
That's what confused me about that other woman is I feel like she had a larger point that a lot of times there's this performative speaking to like the liberalism that then doesn't even match up with their actions, and that it would be better to like try more actions to help people than to just change the verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I agree. But then she would go and she'd say something so crazy that I'd be like, I guess we don't agree. Like,
yeah. But what you were saying just now about gossip being like, quote unquote, toxically feminine, I found it so interesting and undermining of her point because she's saying an example of toxic female behavior is gossiping. And one of her big problems is women don't have an ability to give direct feedback, right? Whereas this entire problem of like women doing cancel culture and accusing men of things, that is nothing if not direct feedback. Don't do that.
It's also so funny to pretend that men have never done a witch hunt. Like, I guess Luigi Mangione, he's what, cancel culturing in the correct male way. Like, even if we want to go with this argument she has that women gossip and that's feminine and then men take action as groups and that's masculine and that's better.
I think whatever the New York Times is doing right now is truly disgusting. Like this path they're going down right now where they're trying to prove how centrist one can be.
Well, that's how I felt. When I first understood it to be like, oh, this man's debating these two women, I was like, okay, sure. I guess they're like big on their side of the world and I just haven't heard of them. But when I found out that like he brought them on to debate each other, I was like, you cannot be normalizing these conversations of, well, women are stupid bitches and it's not fair.
Yeah.
Not everything is of journalistic integrity. Not all conversations are equal.
Right now, I feel with what has happened to journalism is just because something is said doesn't mean it's worthy of a response. And the fact that these conversations are being elevated and elevated and elevated, like the conversation on trans sports, right? Just because a conservative says this isn't fair sports, you actually can just pretend that person like doesn't fucking exist because the way that the conversation keeps elevating and elevating and elevating gives it more attention, more attention. Now it's being legislated against. Like now there are all of these things legitimizing the conversation. And I think that like bringing these genuinely hateful topics to reputable places to just be like, well, what if we debated it?
Mhm.
What if we didn't?
I read a tweet that I found very interesting in myself. It was about Sydney Sweeney, and it was about the interviewer interviewing Sydney Sweeney and like why that was such a bizarre moment tonally. And they were like, well, the interviewer clearly believes that there's like capital one, capital G, like capital T truth, like one great truth that we all agree on. And it's that like white supremacy is bad. And so by putting it to Sydney Sweeney this way, she thought, of course, Sydney Sweeney is a human being that I see has thoughts and beliefs. And like, of course, they're a good person. Of course, they're going to agree with this thing that I think universally all good people agree with. And when Sydney Sweeney wouldn't bite, she was shocked. And I was like agreeing with this tweet. And then I realized that the guy tweeting was like making fun of the interviewer. That he was saying like, oh, because the interviewer believes that anyone she thinks is valuable and worth talking to has the same thoughts as her, they were going to agree that racism is bad. And like, isn't that interviewer stupid? Because like a lot of us with great thoughts and a lot of us humans like think racism is good. Like I don't know. But it was crazy because it was this thing I was like, yeah, we agree. Like anyone normal would disavow white supremacy and we all are of that truth. And he was saying, isn't it preposterous that people think that way? That like they are so closed-minded that they think any smart, good person would agree with that when obviously that's debatable. And I was like, that's so crazy to me because I guess I am the person he's accusing that interviewer of being that like,
I thought we all
agreed at this point that like, of course, it doesn't always come out that way. But if asked point blank, should all people be treated equally? Everyone would agree, yes. But I forget that we live in a world that not everyone agrees. And the idea that conversations like that are now being brought to the New York Times.
Yes.
It should be believed that we all agree that people are equal and anyone who doesn't agree is the aberration. It shouldn't be normalized.
And now we've like normalized conservative journalism to a point where like the New York Times is a conservative paper. Teen Vogue doesn't exist. Like all of these outlets are folding into this like right-wing media landscape. Anyway, so I read the original piece, which I agree it was really hard to sort of get what they were trying to go for in that interview or like in that debate because both women do agree there's something wrong with women in the workplace. And so it was hard to have one woman just like kind of getting frustrated that the other woman sounded so bad in her take because she was like, I'm trying to get you over the finish line here. Like they were trying to get to the same place because these thoughts aren't fully formed thoughts. So when you try to expand them or like try to shift them in any way, like all she can do is repeat what she was saying. She can't move forward with them because they're not based in actual reality. You know what I mean? Like when something is balancing on nothing, like you can't move it around because it'll fall. And so she couldn't like work through her thoughts because they're nonsense. And so then you have this other woman who's trying to ask in the world they were in where they were agreeing women are bad and shouldn't be at work. In that world that they were both in, I feel like she was asking pretty valid questions like, do you think women offer anything good in the workplace?
Well, like where I had to drop off is they started talking about how like what's that word? Veterinarians are predominantly women. And so she goes, if you believe that women being in the workplace will create a crash and burning of society, which is her ultimate belief,
yes.
that like right now women in our institutions are coming for our laws, are going to like completely disassemble the world as we know it and the whole country is going to collapse. And she goes, well, do you think the fact that like 80% of veterinarians are women, has that undermined that entire profession? And she goes, well, no. And she goes, except for the fact that a lot of veterinarians are actually owned by private equity, and that is women's faults because women are less entrepreneurial because they take less risks, so they don't own as many offices themselves. And because of that, they're being bought up by private equity, which is hurting animals, both farmers and pets. And I was like, that's where I dropped out. It's women's fault that private equity is ruining veterinarians? How could that be possible?
How could that be possible? Because again, the thing that's so fascinating about this and the reason she makes such a good case for women ruining the workplace is because she does such an incompetent job. And I was like,
well, you bitch are bad at your job.
You are really bad at what you're fucking doing and it doesn't look good for us.
It's so funny because if you think private equity is ruining the workforce, show me one more, quote unquote, in her own way of describing it, masculine job of people who like don't collaborate with others, who go in, who are aggressive, extracting wealth and then throwing everything out.
But she thinks that's what's good.
I know, but then
Yeah.
here she is saying, but private equity is ruining veterinarians.
Yeah.
And it's still somehow women's
But that's
fault.
what I'm saying is all of her thoughts can only exist in like the silo of that thought, because when you apply it to anything else, it tips over and falls. So you have this other woman who's like kind of trying to be on her side and asking her like, oh, you say men and women have different values and virtues, but like what are the women's virtues? And she like takes it as an absolute attack on her work. And this other woman is like scrambling. She keeps trying to be like, no, I was just asking you a question. Like I was trying to clarify a moment from your piece. Like I'm not mad at your piece. I'm asking a question about it. And like this woman is just like starts spinning the fuck out.
Does she ever come up with anything? This is where I dropped off. Does she
No.
I had a really hard time when she said, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of why McCarthyism was good. And I was like, well, you're an insane person.
Yes.
And then by the veterinarian thing, I just shut it off.
So in the original piece, she has all these examples for what she considers to be masculine and feminine behaviors. The biggest problem here, and the reason I find it so preposterous, aside from like its general ideology, I think being very harmful, I think the reason it's so preposterous that this was elevated to larger platforms is that her own ideas don't line up with themselves. This idea that wokeness arose around the same time that many important institutions tipped from demographically majority male to majority female. Everything you think of as wokeness involves prioritizing the feminine over the masculine, empathy over rationality, safety over risk, cohesion over competition. She talks about the way men and women deal with conflict. Men wage conflict openly while women covertly undermine or ostracize their enemies. And she feels that women are overall just like unable to compartmentalize because they lead with emotion. And the thing is, all of this leading back to cancel culture is what isn't true about it. Like the fact that men criticize openly while women quietly undermine, cancel culture is women for the first time openly criticizing and openly discussing the problems that men have caused and like the injustices enacted by men. And so when you have women openly criticizing, suddenly to call that the apex of female and feminized and workplace ruining behavior is inherently against the entire piece.
It's also so funny, specifically talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, is like being horny, not an emotion. I guess I don't know if that's technically an emotion, but the idea that these men are like groping and grabbing. And one of the big court cases she likes to talk about is she goes, this woman sued everybody just because they had some pinups at their work. And it's like, no, these men had like full naked photos of women at their office and they'd like pretend to fuck them and say like lewd, gross shit. Why isn't that a bad behavior? Because people are like, oh, that's just boys being boys. But I'm like, but that's deeply emotional. It's like weirdly emotional to feel so entitled that you every time you feel attracted to someone, so you should get to act out on it.
Yeah, and she says that female modes of interaction are not well suited to accomplishing goals in major institutions.
Neither is stopping to fuck somebody. Like that's like the biggest time waster I've ever heard of when you're trying to like hammer out a deal.
And then the other problem is that we simply don't have proof of that. Like we actually don't have evidence that what she calls the feminine way of handling workplace interactions, goal setting, etc. The idea that that isn't productive, we don't know that. We have no proof of it. All we have is proof that there is a masculine method of leadership that has led us to Elon Musk's $1 trillion and everyone else not having food. Like, what do you mean we don't know if the feminine version of the workplace? She keeps on insisting it will ruin things, and we just don't have that information.
I mean, there's a million things in there that I said that's not like one of her big things is looking at how many women are in like junior roles and being like, so obviously we can just assume that in the next few years it'll even out at the top two. It actually won't because it hasn't been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem is like, why are there so many qualified women in the junior roles that aren't making it to the leadership positions? That's like the inequality. It was just so far from what I've experienced as reality. They were talking about how boomers are really obsessed with giving away power. And they had a specific line where they go, I mean, how often do you walk into a company where the boomers are going, we're letting the juniors handle it their way?
I've literally never seen that.
Has
in my
anybody
life.
call in if you've ever in your life been at a corporate workplace where you go, the thing about the leadership here is they're giving up a lot of their power and allowing us to try brand new ideas that the junior team is taking over on. I've never in my life heard somebody say that.
Biden tried to run again.
Nancy Pelosi.
Chuck Schumer.
All anybody does is hoard the power at the top. They were like, there's this giant transference of power and money from the oldies to the youngies. The youngies, by the way, are like 42 in this situation,
Yeah.
and it's not even true. It's really crazy.
Can millennials handle business? I mean, they're 40.
I'd hope so. They're grandpas.
And so she kind of ends with this grand conclusion that the problem itself is that HR allows the women to run amok with their wokeness. Women can sue their bosses for running a workplace that feels like a fraternity house, but men can't sue when their workplace feels like a Montessori kindergarten. That's because one thing is bad and one thing is fine.
What do you mean it feels like a kindergarten? I guess that's somebody who's worked with men and worked with women. I much prefer working with women because like they get shit done. I just don't think that this is true.
Exactly. Like it just isn't true.
Ask me and Ashley. You don't think we confront each other? If we're not confronting each other, why is Ashley always crying?
You're making it sound like kindergarten, Claire. You're making her office sound like kindergarten. But there was a piece about Scott Galloway in The New Yorker called What Did Men Do to Deserve This? That I think is what the response to this article should be. Like, it's a very coherent and concise response to this. What do we do about the men? The men. This woman writes a piece about Scott Galloway's method of leading the men, which is arguably a lot less toxically male than most of the other leaders of the manosphere.
Well, I think what he's willing to do is give credit to women.
Yes.
I think the problem with the Is Feminism Ruining the Workplace article is there was such an idea of like, no woman's ever earned anything. Every advancement any woman's ever accomplished is identity politics that's been handed to her. And like one of the weird threads of that article was like this truth seeking of it's just inherently untruthful to act like any woman deserves a promotion or is good at her job. Whereas I think what Scott Galloway is willing to do is be like, the women are outworking the men, and then be like, that's so sad for the men. How do we help them? I don't know. They could work harder too.
They could work harder too. And I think what Jessica Winter brings up is that this obsession with uplifting the men, uplifting the men, uplifting the men ignores that a lot of these problems are for an entire generation and it actually has nothing to do with the men. And this kind of mentality still perpetuates the idea that men are still deserving of being a half step above women at all times. Equality means that women are still a little bit below men, but everyone's able to afford a house now.
I mean, one of the examples is that, like, obviously male unemployment, but of course, it's a hard job market for everybody. And when you look at the industries where women out-employ men, it's like healthcare and teaching and like a lot of these jobs that are considered poorly paid, overworked, that men just won't take, that they could get in there. But at the end of the day, they think that they deserve something better. So the idea is young people alike, men and women, can't afford houses right now, but it's really way sadder when a man can't afford a house.
Exactly. And all of these people, even the Scott Galloways who aren't out here degrading women necessarily, the idea that men need a specific voice to talk to them is in line with the belief that like men do need to be uplifted. What these pundits are nudging us to do ever so politely is accept that women in the main are accustomed to being a little degraded, a little underpaid, ignored, and dampened in their ambitions in ways that men are not and will never be. The female-coded person, to borrow Krugman's terminology, may feel overwhelmed by childcare costs, ashamed that she can't acquire a mortgage, or hollowed out by long hours as an ICU nurse, but such feelings do not disturb the order of the universe.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to explain that a lot of these men who kind of herald the men of the past who were real men who could afford a home, like aside from the economic changes that have happened since, you know, the men who were building the Empire State Building could afford a mortgage. Also, many of them were dissatisfied with their lives and unhappy. There's a book that just came out about the hands that built the Empire State Building. And it talks about the way these men were degraded and made to feel that they weren't real men. So this idea that right now we should be living up to the way the men of like the 1930s were living, those men were also unsatisfied in their manliness.
It's just so funny that, I mean, women were forced to work harder and they have, and now they've come out better employees, better students. And I'm sorry that that makes you mad. If it makes you so mad, work harder.
Yeah, and I think that if you want to feel fairness in that space, then perhaps we can offer some female-coded behaviors like compassion.
Yeah, empathy. You're not on Twitter, but on Twitter there was a big conversation this week about some tech guy who has like this dating website and saying how fucked up it is that he really wants to be a father, but like he can't get a date. And isn't that crazy? He's thinking about being a single dad. And all he wants is like a hot, smart wife who could have a great job, but probably wants to spend most of her time raising the children. but they all have this qualification. Of course, they all want to be non-monogamous. All these men can't believe nobody will have their child just because they can't commit.
You know how much I love the ENM community. I go crazy for it.
Really, the entitlement is, I guess it's like everyone wants more than they've ever wanted before.
Listen, it's unethical to keep a swinging dick that good to yourself.
So, Ashley, should we get to our favorite part of the week, caps off?
Let's tip our little baby caps. Okay, so this week we tip our caps to the Warrior Fingers posting 100 Instagram stories. Deborah Messing, congratulations on your incredible effort. You were not able to keep Zohran Mamdani out of office, but you were able to maintain your position as one of the most Islamophobic people to have ever been on Will and Grace. I'm really proud of you. I hope that they let you sign another rocket
Yeah.
in honor of your great work.
And I'm sure when you woke up this morning, no different than you woke up any of the other mornings of your life, it was very scary.
I'm sure you felt so in danger being a extremely rich white woman in a reasonably safe city. I don't even think she lives here. I don't even know if she's been here.
She was on TV.
She was on TV, and for that, we'll always be regretful.
May grace find you wherever you go. We will it.
We will it.
That's our episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please tell a friend. Tune in next week. Tune in
Tell
old
a friend
week.
to tell a friend.
And good night.
And good noticings.